Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
November 2nd, 1966. Woodrow Derenberger is returning home on a work night. He's traveling to Mineral Wells, West Virginia from Marietta, Ohio on a cold and rainy evening. He was traveling on Route 77, cruising at about 50 miles an hour at approximately 7:25 p.m. His Ford Econovan rumbled down the road, loaded with stereos and sewing machines, and he was nearing the intersection of Route 47. Suddenly, Woody hears a crash from the back of the van. He reached up to turn on the dome light to inspect what had made the crashing sound, concerned something may have shaken loose. In the rearview mirror, he noticed a car coming up behind him that's blinking their lights to pass. The vehicle passed around his truck, and it was then that Woody noticed another vehicle of some sort behind the car that had just passed him. He was thinking at first that it was just simply another car. Approximately 50 feet behind the car that had just passed him was a ship. The vessel appeared to not have any lights. This strange machine pulled ahead of him, turning sideways in front of him, giving him time to slow down but not enough room to let him pass. He pulled over to the side of the road and stopped a mere 8 feet from the vessel. When it stopped, the door opened and a man emerged. He stepped out and approached Woody's van, passing in front of the headlights. He could see this man was almost 6 feet tall, about 180 pounds, dark hair that was combed straight back, and appeared to have a tan. The man motioned for Woody to roll the window down, and he did. He was so frightened he could not speak. The man started to communicate, but Woody recalls he never actually spoke out loud. He just stood there outside of the van with a grin. The man was communicating telepathically. Woody also never idled a sound, and the man continued by saying his name was Cold and that he was from Lanulos. They concluded their brief conversation, and the man turned to return to his ship. Before leaving, he conveyed telepathically, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Derenberger. We'll be seeing you soon."
Welcome to Creepy Confidential. I'm your host, Noelle, your resident weirdo Wisconsinite. I open case files on cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and other worldly creepy. With new cases, local lore, and live broadcasts. So get ready, creeps. It's Creepy Confidential.
Before we begin today's episode, we want to welcome you to the Creepy Confidential Coffee Corner. We love coffee around here, and it's what keeps us fueled for those long hours of searching the skies for flying saucers. Our 2024 March Coffee of the Month is Silva Coffee. They roast their coffee in small batches over oak and hickory wood fires in the old Calhoun district of Clemson, South Carolina. The roast that I received is a single origin from Costa Rica with a delish, smooth, but robust flavor. No fancy flavors here, just good coffee. Remember, creeps, our 2024 Coffees of the Month are not sponsored. We believe in shopping here in our cherished US of A and trying to put money back in the businesses that help make our daily lives better. Go to www.silvacoffeeco.com and pick up this delicious blend while supplies last. Now, on to the show. Welcome back, creeps. Many of you out there in the Creep Nation have heard about the incident we will be discussing today. My first time hearing this name was during my initial research about the superstar cryptid Mothman. Today we are discussing the well-dressed, well-groomed visitor from Lanulos, Indrid Cold, aka the Grinning Man. I was under the impression that this was the first time that anyone saw Indrid, but it turns out the Mothman-related sighting was not the first sighting and not the last. During the Mothman Festival, you undoubtedly see Indrid Cold. He can be spotted amongst the masses, well dressed in a suit and a black trilby hat, straight from the 60s. He moves around downtown and can be found standing still with dewy skin and with that oh-so-slight grin. He does not talk and moves gently and yet with purpose. Think of it as a Where's Waldo a la Indrid Cold sort of thing. I thought that the only time Indrid Cold was a thing was during the whole Mothman situation, due to the movie The Mothman Prophecies. And I know the movie is a book by Mr. Keel about the Mothman Prophecies, but I remember watching the movie. This was before I started on the journey of learning all about the real encounters with this extraterrestrial man. So I'm going to start there with the Mothman Prophecies. Let's start with the encounter that is associated with Mothman, since it's the one that I learned about first. This encounter comes from the author John Keel, the book The Mothman Prophecies, but more relatively again, the movie. The book brings a few things together about real-life encounters with Indrid. Spoiler alert, I'm about to talk about these details freely about the Mothman Prophecies. If you have never seen it, again, may not want to listen to this part. Our character, John Klein, is sitting in a dimly lit room and is talking on the phone to this garbled, kind of electronic sounding voice. He asks who he's talking to, and the voice says, "My name is Indrid Cold." And the voice proceeds to tell John about where he grew up, and then he puts Indrid through a variety of tests. Where's my watch? Moving it from above to under the bed, and then the question, what's in my hand? And he reaches into the nightstand, and you can hear this creature, this being, figuring out what is in his hand. And he says, "You're reading my mind, aren't you?" The character, John, does. Followed by him freaking out and grabbing a book in the room, telling the voice to tell him what's on line 3. He then asks him what he looks like and what happened to his wife. Movie drama escalates, so on and so forth, and then another scene shows John on the phone defending himself, telling whomever it is on the line that it was not him that called, but the person is like, "I could have sworn that this was you." The conversation isn't the freaky part, but the mirror reflection desyncs, and then a few moments later, John slams the closet door, and as he slams it, the mirror scans, and bam, there in the reflection is the supposed Indrid Cold. 2 things are learned from this. The image is blurry, but you can make out a grinning face. And his presence brings on these strange happenings in the surroundings when he is present. In another quick fictional movie reference before we commence with the historical ones, in this kind of neo-noir film, The Lost Highway. I know it's a weird one, but stay with me. Again, we're about to talk about the movie. If you've never seen this movie, don't listen. The scene is set, and we see Bill Pullman's character at a little house soiree enjoying some beverages. The song playing in the scene is a modernized, kind of lounge version of the song Spooky. Suddenly, the music completely cuts out, and the man approaches him. He tells him they've met before, and then the scene plays out. This version of Indrid Cold is not only in front of him and at the party, but also at his home. It's a weird scene. The man has an appearance of a possible Indrid. They also show him talking but not moving his mouth, that whole telepath thing, but the voice is on the phone instead, so not necessarily in his head. This is just a strange injection of the alien person we know as Indrid Cold, or so many think. I just want to make sure that people know that there's possibly another reference. Now, The Lost Highway is not a feel-good alien movie. It's a lot. So watch that with caution. I just wanted to bring him into this because it was a strange reference to show up. I just felt it was a decent honorable mention since we're starting with film interpretation of this Grinning Man. So creeps, let's get on to these historical sightings, shall we? October 11th, 1966, Pompton Lakes, New Jersey. site of the famous DuPont explosives factory. A policeman and his wife see a blinding light that they described as, quote, as big as a car. They notice that it nearly scrapes the 550-foot tall television tower, and they watch as the object moves northward, and then it disappeared into the neighboring hills. In those neighboring hills on the same night, 2 police officers, Sergeant Thompson and Patrolman Wester of the Wannock Reservoir Police, would see the very same light. At about 9:45 p.m., they would witness it swoop low over the reservoir. They would describe it as follows, quote, "The light was brilliantly white. It lit up the whole area for about 300 yards. In fact, it blinded me when I got out of the patrol car to look at it, and I couldn't see for about 20 minutes after," end quote. But that's not all. That same night, there is another sighting. 40 miles south of the police officers in Elizabeth, New Jersey, there are 2 young boys who are having a terrifying experience. The 2 boys, James and Martin, were walking along 4th Street and New Jersey Street when they reached a corner parallel to the turnpike. The turnpike is very elevated and up a huge, steep embankment, and there is also a very steep incline from the busy turnpike to the main thoroughfare. Along the main road below is a very tall fence, making it impossible for someone to scramble up the turnpike and the lower road. Another particular in this is the street lights were very bright, making details of someone standing in front of you very clear. It was on the corner where the 2 boys encountered a strange man. James says he spotted the peculiar man standing behind the fence. They described him as the biggest man they had ever seen. My arguing factor here is that when you are young, almost all the adult men you might see or encounter all look like the biggest man you have ever seen. But the nudge to each other, they nudge each other, wondering how this man got there. When suddenly the man pivots. He pivots around to face the boys and grins a big old grin. When interviewed a few days later, their stories would line up with what this man was, which was about 6 feet tall and dressed in sparkly green coverall costume of some kind that shimmered and appeared to reflect the streetlights. They described the man with a darker complexion and beady eyes that were set far apart. The strange part about their description, however, was that they could not remember the man having hair, ears, or nose, and they both stated they could not recall his hands. They agreed that there was no way someone could have just ran down the hill and been composed just standing there. Fast forward a few weeks to November 2nd. This is when the famed Woody Derenberger sighting takes place. Following his encounter that we talked about at the opening of the episode, a news station asked him to be part of an interview, which he was prepared for. He was peppered with questions, and he recounted the encounter confidently and with regulated kind of tone and intention. On his way home that evening from the interview, Indrid visited him once again, but telepathically, he began to share details of his home planet, Lanulos. He told him he was sent to research Earth, and that this planet was much like his planet, atmosphere consisting of air, water, plants, and other animals as well. The conversation was brief, and when Woody arrived at home, he was surprised that there was a crowd waiting to talk to him. His phone was ringing off the hook, and his story became an immediate sensation. Other researchers, journalists, and others that were just curious about what had happened to him all wanted to know the story. One night, Woody returned home again, and Indrid was waiting for him. Not only was he waiting with him, he had a friend. He was not alone. He had brought Carl. They stayed up for hours, discussing life on their home planet. According to Lanulosian lore, the ability to communicate telepathically came into being after humans crashed on their planet. This meeting with Indrid was not the last. Many communications, and even Woody was given the chance to travel to their ship. These interactions are documented in the book Mr. Derenberger wrote called Visitors from Lanulos by Woodrow Derenberger. His book would go on to document his trip in their ship and their travels back to their home planet. Apparently, Indrid also has a wife named Kimmy. He was taken to Lanulos, where he would see cities called gatherings. All their houses operated on nuclear power. One thing that stuck out to him was that everyone was naked. Woody would partake in the local behavior and disrobed. He returned home, and some time went by. One evening, he and his friend Jim were at a local location that was known for UFO sightings, hoping to see some additional things from the sky. After watching for a while, a vessel would return, and he and Jim would see 3 beings emerge. Carl, Indrid Cold, and a third being that Indrid communicated to Woody that they were not like them and to create a diversion to distract them. Woody began arguing with his friend Jim to draw attention, which worked. Indrid's crew flanked the other crew, and they retreated and flew away. These beings looked very human in nature from far away, but from close up, their skin around their eyes was red and wrinkled, and instead of hair, they had sort of pin feathers, think kind of like a bird. And they are known for stealing anything they can get their hands on, including humans. According to Indrid Cold, these are the same aliens that abducted Barney and Betty Hill. Sadly, Woody would pass in the year 2000 after years and years of trying to convince people the truth about UFOs. His daughter Tanya would pick up the torch and continue to try as well to spread the word, also writing a book called Beyond Lanulos, and claims to have also met Indrid. Sadly, this past May, she also passed away. So what's our takeaway with all this information? Remember, I just try and present what I found so that you can make your opinions. I personally think this is a melding of 2 separate beings. It reminds me of what has happened with the story of the Loveland Frog. An excellent presentation that I went to was by an author, James Willis, where he walks through all of these different sightings and things that have happened and kind of things, people that have changed their story. I did a similar story as well, talking about the kind of history of progression of change of the Loveland Frog. The creature that started as the Loveland Frog has been melded together with these other small alien-type creatures that were witnessed on the side of the road with a rod emitting sparks. Today, we see the police report from the other sighting, and it looks like 3 little humpback humanoid beings with one of them holding a rod. Now remember, these are 2 separate encounters and 2 different beings. But we all know today as the Loveland Frog is a cute little frog, or frog-like creature that now is standing on its back legs like a little human, and then this little frog is now holding a magic wand. I think that this is what has happened here with Indrid Cold. Yeah, there are tons of sightings along the East Coast, all fairly close together, but I think Indrid Cold and the Grinning Man are seen by the 2 boys and these other 2 people, but in any case, having a man approach you or turn to you and simply just grin doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same thing, the same Indrid Cold. To have an encounter like this, no words, but only telepathic communication, it would be startling. Is it an alien? Is it a demon? Maybe. But one thing for certain, it's all in your head. If you enjoyed today's episode, we ask that you please give us a creepy 5-star review and click that follow button so that you don't miss a single episode. If you enjoy our content and want a little more creepy in your life, we are everywhere. Instagram, YouTube, X, Twitch, and everywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Which, again, we know that your favorite podcast is Creepy Confidential. Coming up, Creepy Confidential After Dark on March 29th, we are welcoming the podcast Castles and Cryptids to the live stream. will be live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Remember, no script, no rules, and a whole lot of creepy. YouTube has the video ready, and the chat is live, so click that notify me button so that you don't miss this fun time. Closing out today's episode is a Darkcast Network preview presentation by the podcast Rogue Darkness. Stay creepy, my friends, and we'll see you next time right here on Creepy Confidential.
Witchcraft, the occult, extremist beliefs, murder. Tune in to Rogue Darkness each Friday and join host Raven as I uncover horrific crimes committed under the misconceptions and misunderstandings of witchcraft and other belief systems. I'll cover a wide range of crimes involving ritualistic killings and extremist beliefs to cult persuasion and supposed possession. Anything and everything that borders the line of horrifying. There's always 3 sides to a story. Side A, Side B, and then the truth. Let's uncover the truth together and explore the darkness of mankind, one crime at a time. Available wherever you get your podcast fix, simply by searching Rogue Darkness.